Commission resumes. I see you back, Mr. Jamison. Let me remind you, you're still under oath. Did you took the oath, or did you affirm?
I took the oath.
You took the oath. Some people take affirm. Anyway, you're one of the oath takers.
Yes.
You're still bound by the terms of your oath. Mr. Mpofu, you're still cross-examining.
Yes, thank you,
Sorry,
Chairperson.
Mr. Shaskerson.
That's him. Chair, it's not the worst insult I've received in my life, Chair. That would be an insult.
What did you say?
Chair,
it's slightly easier not to make that mistake. Only slightly.
just one short announcement. A number of parties have approached us for clarification in relation to the ruling which was made by the Chair on Friday last week. I just wanted to draw the attention of parties to the fact that we have circulated a proposal which we hope will resolve the issue, and we ask that parties revert to us as soon as possible in response to the proposal which we have distributed late this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chester. Mr. Budland. After 2 years, one shouldn't make mistakes like that. I get it right this time. Mr. Mpofu.
That's right, Chairperson. Thank you. Yes, so thank you, Commissioner Togota.
This is becoming infectious, isn't it? Mr. Wesley, to introduce a serious note for a moment, only for a moment. How much time has Mr. Mpofu got left?
Mr. Mpofu's got 74 minutes, Chair. Then he'll be followed by the Legal Resources Centre. I'll remind them half an hour, and then AMCU for 2 hours.
Good. Thank you. All right, Mr. Mpofu.
Another 74. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Jamison.
Afternoon.
Thank you. Right. Your last answer before we broke yesterday was we were dealing with your email of the 15th of August on page 34 of quadruple V1. Remember? And your last answer, or rather, my last question and your answer, my question was that the minister was right that insofar as this was a wage dispute, management and the unions should sit down and sort it out. And you said that was correct.
Yes.
You remember that, yeah. Now, and before that, you and I had agreed that your characterization of it as you called it, I can't remember the term you used, as simply a criminal matter would have been wrong. It was actually a twin-headed, I think that's the term you used. It was a twin-headed
yes,
monster.
Twin-headed, double-headed, hydra.
Correct,
yeah.
Yes. Now, you'd also agree, I'm sure, that if it was true that this could have been sorted out, or at least the underlying issue, let's call the labor issue the underlying problem. Would you agree with that?
No.
Not denying that there was a subsequent problem of unrest and destabilization, as you call it, and so on. Would you be comfortable with that categorization?
No, I thought you and I agreed that it was twin-headed.
Yes, no.
Yeah.
Having
So
agreed that it's twin-headed.
One doesn't underlie the other, or they're two separate issues.
So you think that they were all the same? There was no underlying of the twin heads. There was none that you could say is the underlying issue, and the other one the subsequent resultant issue.
No, I wouldn't. I'll stick with my twin-headed hydra type.
Yeah. No, I'm not debating your twin-headed. I also actually agree with you, but I'm saying, having agreed that it was twin-headed, one can still go further and say that the labor issue was the underlying problem, which had escalated into criminality or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Well, then you would describe it as one was subservient to the other, or one was the root cause of the other, and I wouldn't agree with that.
Yes, no, I do. So there was no root cause as far as you're concerned.
Well, there would be root causes of each.
Yeah, but in relation to each other, which one would you say is the root cause? The labor dispute or the unrest?
Neither, as I said. I could describe what I think is a root cause of each, but not that one was a root cause of the other.
All right, let's, fine. I don't want to debate that with you. But in any event, you'd agree that to say that insofar as the thing is a labor issue, it must be sorted out between management and the unions, cannot by any stretch of the imagination be something that is damaging, because it's the truth. You and I have agreed that it's the truth.
Yes, in part, if I could add to that.
Well, which part don't you agree with?
When you say it was to be sorted out by management and the unions, my view is it had gone beyond that and it needed some other intervention to be able to sort it out.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I can accept that if you're saying it's insufficient. It's insufficient to simply say it must be sorted out by management and the union, because you and I have agreed that it's now twin-headed.
Yes.
But that's a different thing from saying it is damaging to say what is the truth. It might be insufficient, but how can it be damaging to say the unions and management must sit down?
I wasn't referring to that being damaging. It was actually, that was referring to the fact that Minister Shabangu had not denounced the violence.
Yeah, but how is that damaging?
Not denouncing the violence? Well, I think she's a senior political figure. She's the Minister of the DMR. She is our regulator. She's the person we first turned to try and seek her counsel and assistance. And it's already, I think it was probably Wednesday, there's 10 people in the mortuary, and the only thing she says is it's a labour dispute that management and the unions must sit down and that's the part I was referring to.
Well, Mr. Jamison, I'm going to argue firstly that you're making up that version, because in your email you don't say anything about this so-called omission of violence. What you say is simply this: the minister was on radio today saying she'd been briefed that this was a wage dispute and management and unions should sit down and sort it out, which you and I agree is true. And then you say, I'm sorry, it's page 34.
Yeah, I forgot it.
Yes. V1, page 34. And then you say, I'm not sure, not sure who briefed her. We are waiting to talk to her through Roger, I suppose. And although not too damaging, it's also not too helpful. In other words, it's damaging, might not be too damaging, but it's damaging. And what is damaging is the fact that she says a wage dispute must be sorted out by management and the unions. You don't say anything about any omission to mention violence. Would you agree that much?
That was what was in my mind when I wrote this.
Well, can we really be concerned by what was in your mind, or should we be concerned about what is on your piece of paper that you wrote?
Both.
Mr. Chairman, I think the last comment is a little unfair, because if you want to know what he wrote, it's there. You don't have to go through it. What he was asked is what he meant by what he wrote. Well, then he's going to tell you what's on his mind.
No, I never asked him that. But anyway, the point I'm making to you, Mr. I didn't ask you what you meant. I wouldn't make that mistake. What I've said to you is that what you have here is a statement that is interconnected. You say that she says the dispute and management and unions should sit down and sort it out. Then you say, I'm not sure who briefed her. In other words, for her to make that statement. And although it's not too damaging, it's also not too helpful. It's clear. There's no way in there where you can imply that actually what you are talking about was her failure to talk about violence. Can you help us with that?
Yes, I can help you. It's very clear in the letter written on Monday, where I said, at the very least, please will you denounce the violence, along with many other people. But that was the least I'd asked her to do.
No, that won't help you. Remember, in that letter, you also asked for the police and the army,
Yes.
which we are going to get to just now. Yeah.
Yes.
So that also cannot can be the answer.
To help you more, connected with that, was, again, we're asking, please, to Mr. Ramaphosa, can you ask the minister to talk to us? We'd now been waiting for 3 days. And this was headline news on many of the media, whether it be electronic or on the TV. It was inconceivable to me that she wasn't aware of it, and that she wasn't aware that we wanted to talk to her. And if we'd have talked to her, this is exactly what we would have said.
Okay, let me put it this way. Flowing from your misdiagnosis or your wrong characterization of this as a single-headed beast as opposed to be a double-headed beast. You also said in that same email that it could not be resolved without political intervention and needs the situation to be stabilized by the police and army. You would agree that insofar as it was a labor dispute, you don't need the police or army?
Well, two things. One is, it does say that. That's what it said. It said that also in the letter of Monday, so it was a repetition. And secondly, this part is not talking about the labour dispute. It's talking about the violence and the murder.
Yes, but that flows. That's what I'm trying to say. That only flows simply from the fact that, according to you, it was not a labour dispute in capital letters.
Yes, concerning the security situation, which is the heading of the email.
Now, maybe we're talking past each other, and it's probably my fault. I'm saying, now that you and I agree that an element of it, which you say was of equal importance, was the labor dispute, you would agree that that element of it did not need what you call political intervention and the army or the police.
Well, it's two questions. One is the political intervention and one is the army and the police. So
it's the same thing?
No. If you look at the letter of Monday, what I was asking for was, could she get involved, which is political intervention? It's her, that's who it's directed at. Could she get the presidents of NUM, the presidents of AMCU, industry and anyone else that she wanted? And could she get us all together and find out what was driving the violence? So it was related to that. But the police and the army is simply related to restoring law and order. Yeah. So this is the twin heads that I was talking about. One area is the labour dispute, and one area is one head, and the other head is the violence. No, Mr. Jameson, please.
Okay, let's take that answer, which I think is I will submit is not an answer to my question. What political intervention would be needed? I thought you and I had agreed that if it were, insofar as it was a labor dispute, it needed management and workers. Well, why would you need political intervention?
I thought we agreed that was insufficient, and I added to it.
No, but listen, you're now evading the question substantially.
I don't think he's evading the question. Just ask your question.
Yeah.
Don't accuse him of evading. If he evades, I will come down on him.
Okay, well, all right. The record will show that when you talked about the twin heads, we're not talking about what we're talking about now. I'm saying to you very simply, if on the labor dispute leg of the problem, okay, what political intervention did you need?
We needed her. If she'd have wanted to bring in the Minister of Manpower, which she did subsequently on the 18th and thereafter, and she'd have brought all the parties together, because only she could. By that time it had gone past us being able to do that. That's the political intervention I'm talking about. Simply that our minister, who's our regulator, who's the head of the DMR, please get involved, and that's what we wanted to talk to her about.
Yes, but that cannot be a true answer, Mr. Jameson, because according to you, this was not big N-O-T, a labor dispute. So what would the Minister of Labour be doing?
Addressing that head. You asked me why did I want political intervention. I wanted political intervention on the other one. That was the letter of Monday.
No, that's the mistake you're making. You're mixing what you said in this letter with what you and I have subsequently agreed during your evidence now. In your letter, you did not have a twin-headed thing. You said it is not.
Correct.
Okay? A labor issue.
The question really to be asked is, what is this? He writes a letter under the heading security situation.
Yes.
We know that there's been a wage dispute since sometime, I think in June 2012, which only ended sometime towards the end of September. We also know that what then happened, there was an unprotected unprotected strike, which began, I think, on the 10th. That was, according to the evidence, enforced, or attempts were made to enforce it by violence and intimidation. And that led to the deaths of people and damage of property and injury to people. That was the law and order issue. That was the security situation. There was no security situation from the time in June when the wage dispute started. There was, I take it, well, there may have been to some extent, but there wasn't the same kind of security situation after, say, the 18th of August. But in the middle, there was a security situation, and that is what he calls, this is why he says this is not an industrial relations issue. That's why I read it. If I'm wrong, you must please tell me.
Yeah, no, Chairperson, with respect, you are. And because, well, you and I first, but also myself and the witness have long agreed that no one can deny that there was a security situation, but that it was a hybrid, or what the witness calls a
Hydra.
Hydra, yes. A twin-headed
hybrid.
Hydra.
Is actually, well, you know, a mule is a hybrid, if you know. Siamese twins are double.
I used that before as well. In any
Mr. Chairman,
event,
if it helps, after my discussion on the issue of insistence yesterday, I did go home and look it up in the dictionary to see if I was questioned again, I could come and agree to it, which I can't. And I looked up hybrid as well, and hybrid is something made by combining two different elements.
Well, that's like a mule.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Now,
that's fine. I'm not interested
I'm concerned. I'm concerned with different
biology.
I'm concerned with we're dealing with analogies and what an academic.
Okay.
I'm concerned with a point which I hope will shorten the debate, and that is, Mr. Mpofu is saying this was a wage dispute. He says it wasn't a wage dispute. It was a double-headed operation, or it was a hybrid, or whatever word you want to use. The question, though, is, and you don't agree. The question is, what was meant by the word this? In other words, what were you talking about? And if it's clear that, and then you go on, you see, in the fourth line of the first bullet, you say, I've had two discussions with the DG. In each case, have characterized this, again this,
Yes.
as not an industrial relations issue, but a civil unrest, destabilization, criminal issue, etc.
Yeah.
Now, which could not be resolved without political intervention.
Yes.
So what's got to be resolved with political intervention is the civil unrest, destabilization, criminal issue.
Yes.
In your second bullet, as I read it, you then say what the political intervention was to be aimed at achieving. Namely, you'd already got 800 police on the site, so that was done.
Correct. It was passé, yeah.
But and there'd been whether that was brought about by the phone calls to the minister, one doesn't know. But the evidence seems to be that in fact it wasn't. But there were 800. There may be an argument about that, so we won't assume that one way or another at the moment. But there were 800 police on the site, and that you were grateful for.
Yes.
You then go on to say our next challenge, and this is presumably what you wanted the political intervention for, to sustain this, i.e. you want to keep the 800 police on site.
Yes. Ensuring
they remain, they must stay, they must take appropriate action so we can get the people back to work. Now, that's a question upon which Mr. Mpofu can, I think, legitimately question you, what you meant by appropriate action. Then it goes on, it'd be good to have some independent confirmation that the police have plans to sustain a presence. So that's going back to keeping them there, sustaining the presence for at least a week.
Yes.
Sustaining a presence for at least a week doesn't mean, this is the 15th, doesn't mean launching an operation, a highly risky operation on the Thursday and killing 34 people. It means sustaining the presence, staying there, keeping the situation under control. And then numbers, and also they must sustain a presence for at least a week, and you don't want numbers to wane by the weekend.
Definitely.
That seems to me to be what the letter is saying, if I'm reading it correctly.
Yes.
And then if you can talk to the minister, please, can you influence these things with her, i.e. sustain the police presence, make sure they don't push off over the weekend, and so on.
Absolutely.
Encourage her to make time to talk to Roger. You were hoping to arrange an audience, if that's the right word, with her and for Mr. Fillmore. Is that what the letter says?
Yes, and we'd been repeatedly trying to do that. And I'd spoken to Roger at the airport before he left the night before.
Now, the other point is,
the purpose.
In regard to the answer to the question, what is this?
Right.
The quotation mark. The answer to that, I would again have thought, but again, this is a prima facie view, I mustn't express definitive views before I've heard all the argument and the evidence. The top of the letter tells us what this is. That's the security situation.
Yeah.
In other words, the situation which arose from the time the unprotected strike and attempts were being made, according to your information, to enforce it by violence and intimidation. There'd been a wage dispute since June, continued to late September, but in the middle was the security situation. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, 100%, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
If I could put it in my own words, I mean that would be better, if you rather, because where I would start is to go back to the objective, and on that I would agree, Mr. Mpofu. Our objective from Sunday was to say that the violence that had erupted was criminal issues, criminal activity, and we clearly saw in some of the emails, and I will say in conversations on the EXCO calls that people were using the word criminals, quite liberally, and criminal activity quite liberally. So won't back away from that at all.
Cars and injuring people is criminal conduct. Anyone's life.
And murder.
And I say killing people. The other point that's important, again, prima facie, introduces no shortening the debate. I hope it doesn't have the opposite effect. In the first line, you say we've had approaches, I suppose that should be, from NUM Eastern Platts, that they'd like to return to work if police can offer adequate protection. So what seems to be what the letter's about is this. We will break the strike, or certainly substantially reduce the strike, certainly as far as Eastern Platts is concerned, if the police can give adequate protection to those people who, according to NUM, are minded to work, but afraid of going to work for very good reason, because they can't be sure that if they try to go to work, they won't be killed, like Mr. Lunga was.
And
is that really what you're talking about?
Well, that's what you referred me to yesterday in those handwritten notes that Mark Monroe had said, if we can secure something at Eastern Platts, and you were questioning about the circle, and I said, I think I recall it was something to do with a bus stop or where people come to work. That was exactly that conversation. Oh. And that was the approach from NUM at Eastern Platts. So as I was saying, I'd spoken to Roger on the phone. He was at the airport the previous night. He was, to say he was angry would, probably does it, that the minister had not made time to contact him or be available to take his call or to meet her. He was saying, Albert, if you can have another go at that in some way, shape or form, if I need to meet her at the airport, if I need to fly on down to Cape Town, if I need to drive from OR Tambo directly to her office or wherever she is, see if you can do anything about that. He was angry that she hadn't spoken to us and made the time. Okay. So as I drove to work,
Okay, Mr. Jameson,
well,
I think that's very interesting, but it's got nothing to do with what I asked.
Well, let him finish the sentence, and then you could ask a question. You say, as you were driving to work, you heard her on the radio, and then you
and in my head, I already had the email formulated.
You told us that the day before.
Email was 2 bullets.
You went home and you wrote an email. You went back to office. Went to your office
in the
at
office.
Melrose Arch.
Yeah.
And what was a 2-bullet, 2-line
turned into
email
a
in your mind turned out to be this one
yes.
page.
I mean, if I could...
No, I think, look, we've seen it. Mr. Mpofu is waiting to ask his next question because his time's running out.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Now, look, I'll cut it short like this. When you and I agreed that this was a two-headed problem, surely anyone, even a child, would agree that when the security situation, as you call it, as the chairperson calls it, was introduced, that did not signal the end of the labor dispute. That's why it's a two-headed thing, isn't it?
Correct.
Yes, thank you. All right. And then to reinforce that issue, on page 47 of the same. Mr. Ramaphosa writes a letter to you and other people and says, I have had a discussion with Susan Shabango in Cape Town. She agrees that what we are going through is not a labor dispute, which is untrue, as you and I have agreed, but a criminal act. Do you understand the difference? between saying it's not only a labor dispute, it's also a criminal act. That's different from saying she agrees that what we're going through is not a labor dispute, but a criminal act. You appreciate the difference?
I can see that, but she doesn't. What she doesn't say is what we're going through is not only a labour dispute. I think you
yes, that's the whole point. That's exactly the point. She says
what Cyril. Well, what
you both can't. Sorry, Mr. Jameson, you both can't talk at once. Mr. Mpofu, are you still questioning him?
Yes, no, I'll defer to him to finish.
Okay.
And of course, he's replying to the email about the security situation. So we're still talking about the security situation.
Now, Mr. Jameson, please. Just listen to the question and answer it. Would you agree that that question, that sentence from Mr. Ramaphosa that says she agrees that what we're going through is not a labor dispute but a criminal act, means that the thing has mutated from one thing to another as opposed to it being a labor dispute with a criminal element?
If she was talking about twin head like I was, then I would agree.
Oh, God. And then you say to that characterization, you say, many thanks, Cyril. That is very helpful. I will call into the DG, so I will reinforce. In other words, you'll reinforce this notion that it's not a labor dispute but a criminal act.
Well, I'd already talked to him on Tuesday and said exactly the same thing.
No, I'm not talking about, when you say will, you're talking about the future. You said you will reinforce with him. Correct?
Yes.
Yes. And then you also had asked him, we dealt with this, to influence and encourage these things, including the characterization, correct?
Sorry, Mr. Mpofu, where are we now?
Oh, on page 34, you said that he must encourage to, rather, please, could you influence these things? And that includes the characterization bullet point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, you are aware that you do know about abuse of power?
Only what you talked to the National Commissioner this morning, I think, did you?
Oh, the first time you're hearing about this. Yeah. Okay. But do you know that using political influence to achieve certain ends might amount to abuse of power?
Yes.
Yes. Now, what you had in mind here was to use Mr. Ramaphosa to speak to his people, so to speak, to speak to the politicians. Correct?
To speak to the politicians, yes.
Yes. And not only to speak to them, but to influence them.
Yes.
Yes. And one of the things you wanted him to influence was that what you are going through at Lonmin should be called a criminal act and not a labor dispute.
Not specifically, no.
Oh.
By this time, that was a redundant point.
Well, if it was a redundant point, then why did you ask him to influence it?
Because
and why, when he did influence it, did he report to you, and why did you thank him for it?
Because I was repeating the characterization that the minister had put the day before, that I'd spoken to the DG about, and he had agreed with me. Someone had briefed her. It couldn't have been the DG, I thought, because he had agreed with me on the characterization. So this was a repeat of that to say, who is briefing her? I mean, I say that there. I'm not sure who briefed her. But if it was the DG, this is what I said to the DG.
Yes, that's fine. But the point of what you want, the action you want to take is that he must influence the characterization from being that this is not a labor dispute but a criminal act. That's self-evident.
Yeah, given what I've said, if that's accepted, yes.
If you see this whole thing as as I can call it a two-pony cart, two pony team pulling a cart. One pony is the labour dispute, the other pony is the law and order issue. Yes. Now, when you say what we are going through is not a labour dispute but a criminal act, are you talking about both ponies or only one pony?
I'm talking about the security situation, which is the criminal acts. If you want to talk about the labour dispute, I can talk about that as well and give you my view on that and how that should be resolved. I've said as much, and I said that in the letter of Monday.
Mr. Jamieson, please. The question is simple. One of the things you wanted Mr. Ramaphosa to influence the politicians on was the characterization of what you were going through as a criminal act only.
Given what I said, that it was relatively peaceful, there was now already 800 police on. There was no further reason to characterise it as criminal because the police were on site. So that's a passé issue now. The real point is bullet 2. How can we sustain them? The reminder about the discussions I had with the DG was related to, I'm not sure who briefed her.
So,
but Mr. Ramaphosa, here is what I spoke to the DG about, for your information. So when you speak to her again, which he clearly said he was going to, who briefed her?
Well, okay.
Because she said she had been briefed.
All right. Look, I'm going to argue that your answer cannot be true because what Mr. Ramaphosa says to you is very clear, and what you say you're going to reinforce with the DG must surely be what he says to you, which is that it's not a labour dispute but a criminal act.
I think you've made your point, Mr.
Yes,
so far as it can be made.
You've
got the material on record to argue the point. Whether it's a good point or a bad point is a matter we decide at the end, but I think you've got enough on record to argue the point.
I thought I was signaling exactly that, Chairperson.
You've got as much out of the witness as you can reasonably
once I say I will argue, it means I'm moving to the next point. or that I can't take it further than that. Would you agree that in the situation that was taking place at Lonmin, the police or the army, should be the last resort?
When you say the situation, you mean the violent situation, or do you mean the labour dispute?
No, I'm telling you what you are going through.
Yes, the violent situation.
I'm talking about what you are going through in its hybrid form, Mr. Jamieson. Let's not go around in circles, which you and I have agreed.
Well,
would you agree that what you are going through, the police and the army should be the last resort?
You've said a couple of times that you and I agreed that it's not a hybrid. It's a twin-headed issue.
Yeah, whatever. The twin-headed issue, would you agree that in solving the twin-headed issue, the police should be the last resort?
In solving one of the twin heads, they should be the first resort, which is stopping the violence, stopping the killing, stopping the murders. That's their duty.
The labour dispute started in June, as I understand.
Yes.
It continued towards the end of September.
Yes, there's a different way of resolving that.
Yeah. From the time in June when the labour dispute started,
yes,
until say the 10th of August, where according to some evidence, the intimidation started. From that time, June to the 10th of August, were the police needed?
No, not at all.
Police were summoned, I understand, when you got information of the march and so forth.
Well, it was an illegal gathering, we had to notify them.
And then you had this period where the security situation.
Yes.
When did the security situation end, as far as you're concerned? We know the labour dispute ended towards the end of September.
Right.
Did the security situation continue right up to then?
I think it continued for quite a while, and we did have a police presence, although it was less. Yeah. And I'm aware of there were some further incidents. I think, during the rest of August and maybe September, there was still some violence, but of course it was nowhere close to what we suffered with the 44.
Evidence is you accept the police weren't required till the 10th of August, even though the labour dispute was going on.
Yes. Yes.
But your case is that once keep the two ponies in mind, once the security situation pony came on the scene, then you say the police were required to deal with that, or to deal with the whole thing.
Yes. No, to deal with the violence. I mean, the labour dispute, there's a separate process for dealing with that.
Yeah. Well, that also can be true, but we won't go there because, as we know, the police were called on the 10th as well. But that's...
he said that because he said there was an illegal gathering.
Well, I thought you said they were not needed. Oh, it was you, Chairperson.
No, okay. Whether it was an illegal gathering, I'm not quite sure, but anyway, that's what he said.
Yes. Anyway, what you do know for sure is that what was reported to you as Lonmin was that the Minister of Minerals had accepted had changed the characterization to becoming to that of a criminal act, correct?
Yes, I think that happened during the course of Wednesday, because when I heard her on the radio in the morning, I didn't hear her mention it, but certainly I can recall in the afternoon there was then a statement made. I don't think it was by her. I think it was apportioned to her spokesperson, but nevertheless,
yeah.
She then characterised it as this being criminal activity, correct?
Yes. So she changed her characterization as a result of the discussion with Mr. Ramaphosa, according to him at least.
I can't comment on whether it was according to him, but I don't think it was according to the DG, because from what I can gather, the DG never briefed us, so it couldn't have been from the DG.
Mr. Jamison, please, man. Mr. Ramaphosa reported to you in an email that Susan Shabangu, I think that's what you called her,
yes,
had now changed her characterization. I have just met with, I even know it off by heart, I don't even know what number. I've just met with Susan Shabangu. She has changed her characterization.
No,
she will now go to the cabinet, blah, blah, blah.
Doesn't it say she will change her characterization? If you know it by heart.
I think there may be an email such as the one Mr. Mpofu is quoting, but certainly on the one on page 47, which is on the Wednesday afternoon, 15th August, 2:58 p.m.
So
He says she agrees with what we're going through is not a labour dispute, but a criminal act. She will correct her characterisation.
Yeah.
But by implication, she'd already changed it in her mind because she'd agreed with him it's not a labour dispute.
Yes, and possibly you can check when the statement was put out, in relation to this email, and see if that was correct.
I'm not talking about statements, Mr. Jamison, and you know it. I'm saying to you, as a result of that intervention, she had agreed to change her characterization.
That's what Cyril says.
Where do we get that? I assume that you're right, but is there an email that says that? Because remember, her evidence was slightly different.
No, but that's why I said according to him. She's a woman. So I said according to him, Mr. Ramaphosa, not according to her. Mr. Ramaphosa says, I asked him specifically, did she change her characterization as a result of your meeting? And he said yes.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's a semantic debate because she does say she will correct her characterization.
Yes.
The very idea of correcting the characterization means there was a previous characterization that was incorrect, which is now correct. So we can leave the semantic issue out. The point is established on the documents we have.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine, Chairperson. One of the key issues about this characterization point, the reason why it's important for us, is because it was the characterization of the situation there as criminal, which must have led to the deaths of these people. And I'm asking you this because you are the person who was so obsessed with changing the characterization, as I put it yesterday. Do you understand that? You don't have to agree that it led to the death of the people, but do you understand why it's important for me?
I can't agree with your characterization that I was obsessed, but I understand what you're trying to build. Yes.
Okay, well, I thought we will settle this. Ms. Pillay said you were insistent. I say you were emphatic, which I think we agree on. We do?
I can't remember, but if you can...
You said you agreed that you put emphasis by using...
go higher, you said to me. You said Mrs. Pillay had relayed you insistent, and you were going to go one higher and say it was obsessive.
Yeah. I'm now saying you were emphatic.
Yeah, I emphasized it, yes.
Yes, you're emphatic. Thank you. Yeah. Now, because you were emphatic on changing the characterization, which, according to this theory that I was talking about, led to the deaths of the people because the characterization linked up with what the minister, incidentally, the person that you wanted to change the characterization, is the person who once said that criminals must be killed without a warning. Do you know about that?
I didn't know that, but I've heard it subsequently.
You've heard it,
from the Commission, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time.
Yes, yeah. so that if that is indeed so, what you are doing, which was to, by the way, why did you want Mr. Ramaphosa to be the one who speaks to these people?
Well, because we'd been trying to speak to the minister since Monday.
And you failed?
And we failed completely. So Roger had phoned Mr. Ramaphosa and asked him if he could find a way to get her to agree to speak to him. He didn't, I think his words on the phone were, he didn't want Cyril to do his bidding, he wanted to do it himself. But we simply couldn't get her to respond. Okay,
so having given up, then he wanted Cyril to do his bidding. He had to. He was forced into that situation.
No, he kept pressurising me.
And you pressurised him.
Well, I pressurised the DG, and then I politely asked Cyril if he could also influence the minister to talk to.
Yes, you pressurised the DG, and then you pressurised Mr. Ramaphosa.
To talk to Roger, yes.
Yes, and okay, so that's what I call the chain of pressure. You were pressurised by Roger. You pressurized the DG, you pressurized Mr. Ramaphosa, he pressurized the ministers. They pressurized the police to kill people.
Well, no, I was only pressurizing them to talk to Roger.
Mr. Chemison, please. I'm saying to you that this pressure, which you have admitted to, that you exerted on Mr. Ramaphosa, we now know that it was transmitted to the politicians. And it was intended to be transmitted to other politicians who may or may not have been available. I'm saying that same pressure, you heard what I read to the National Commissioner this morning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was then referred to in the context of it being causally linked to having to kill this thing immediately, so to speak. That's the same pressure that was transmitted along a chain that included you. Do you understand that?
I heard what you said to her this morning, and I understood that completely.
Yes. Yeah.
The pressure I'm talking about is the first pressure that started from Sunday with the email to the DG and my subsequent conversation was to please get police on site because there's a violent situation. That had actually been accomplished by the time this email was written, per bullet too. So that was passé, as I said. The only other pressure that I wanted from Mr. Ramaphosa was, please, can you get this minister to talk to our chairman? Because he's angry and he's now putting pressure on me.
Yes. And why was Mr. Ramaphosa, in your estimation, the best transmitter of that pressure?
Because per his previous emails, he had already been talking to the minister, and he was the only one that was, because she wasn't talking to Roger and Roger wasn't talking to her.
Yes, but why would Mr. Ramaphosa succeed where Roger had failed? What was so special about him?
Well, he clearly had her on speed dial and had access to her.
Because of his political position?
I think because of his membership of the ANC, his membership of the NEC.
Yeah, the ANC is a political organization. Is that because of his political organization?
I would say so, yes.
Yes, because of his position in the ANC?
Yes. Clearly.
Yeah, clearly, yes. Yeah. Now, if you're going to use political pressure because of somebody's position in the ANC, and that, as I've described it and as you heard this morning, that political pressure somehow leads to a situation where 34 people are killed immediately. Would you agree that that is an untoward exercise of pressure?
I think the way you've described it, absolutely, and it was similar to what you were saying this morning to the National Police Commissioner. It's not the right use of political pressure.
Correct, and it's against the law.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the next issue then is you'd also agree, of course, that as far as we're talking about the, let me put it this way. Ms. Pillay said to you, and I support her in this, that one of the reasons why you were, she didn't use my word obsessed, why you were
insistent,
yes. On this issue was because it was a diversionary tactic, so that the public attention. So it was a kind of a spin thing. Public attention and the quote-unquote pressure should be on the police and the government, as opposed to where it belongs, which is management, which should talk to the people. What do you say to that?
I think I'd answer in two ways. Coming back to the issue of insistence, that was another thing I looked up in the dictionary last night. It says, demand forcefully, not accepting refusal. I thought that was a better description of the striker's demands, personally. It wasn't a description of my behaviour, because I merely had a conversation with the DG and put it to him, and he had agreed with me. There was no insistence in it. In terms of the spin, or what you said, PR, I mean, I'm just not in that line of work. So these emails were all internal. The PR stuff is handled elsewhere. Tanya.
And Tanya, and you had no concern about the PR issue yourself?
Well, she had circulated to me emails asking me to mark up press announcements that were going up on, I think they went out on the Sunday. There was another one that went out on the Tuesday. And I was asked to add to them in any way I could, which I did.
Yeah, was the PR issue any of your concern?
When you say PR issue, it's actually a regulatory issue. We have to make announcements. So it's a regulatory issue that we have to make continuous announcements as a public company.
Maybe you didn't hear my question. Was the PR issue any of your concern?
Not specifically, and not directly. No.
In the letter that you wrote, or the email you wrote on the 15th of August 2012, page 40.
Yeah. The notes for Simon.
Yes.
Yes.
Just ask Commissioner, where's the reference to ETV? Where's the reference to? Let's go to page 41. You say there, I'm reading towards the end, Chairperson, under the heading IR.
IR.
Tanya, that you are talking about.
Yes.
You say Tanya is
That's
also
on page,
doing...
sorry to interrupt you, that's page 41.
41, Chairperson, yes. Oh, yes. You say Tanya... I found it. Tanya is doing a sterling job in London. Lots of incoming, I suppose, from shareholders, funds and analysts. Questioning has changed from security situation to production losses and financial and covenants, and how company will be financed going forward. Remember that?
Yes.
And then you said, again, you say, feeling from Mark and company that the press is too negative, Lonmin management, or our stroke, it's our problem, I suppose, our problem or creation, and this is negative for morale, and perhaps a bit of glass here, half empty, half whatever syndrome. My view is these comments are largely drowned out by the union rivalry, stroke civil unrest, bad for South Africa and SABC platinum industry angles.
Yes.
That's spin. That's the what you're talking about, the angles about how the thing is portrayed, and that is the PR issue, correct?
No, they're not spin. They're exactly as I wrote there. So they're self-evident. So
no,
Mark
but these are, okay, they concern public relations. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the point. So public relations was part of what you were concerned with when you were analyzing these issues, correct?
It was just, I mean, this was my view. It's not public relations spin. The public relations spin comes when someone turns that into an announcement or a release. This, as I said, these were notes prepared for Simon and Roger. They were a collection of not just my views, but you'll see throughout everybody else's. They're the notes I kept from the chairing the meetings.
Mr. Jameson, please. What you're saying here is that there is negative press, that this is Lonmin's problem, it's their creation, and you say that this is negative. But you say your view is that those comments are largely drowned out by the other messaging, which is it's union rivalry, it's civil unrest, it's bad for South Africa.
Correct.
Is that's not, and you're saying that is not public relations, those are not public relations issues,
you were saying
perception management issues.
Well, you were saying it was spin. Spin comes when someone announces something. This is not an announcement, this is a view and a note for briefing.
Does it concern public relations?
Yes.
Was it necessary for your publicity department to send out communiques on the union rivalry and civil unrest, or was that a story which is being picked up by the media houses without the benefit, or if that's the right word, of communiques from your publicity section?
Well, as you see right in the first sentence under IR, we're all over the radio, TV news and wires in SA, mostly first headline. And at that time, what they were saying was this is civil unrest, the police must intervene, it's a public disgrace. Those was self-evident headlines.
It would only be, the point I'm trying to ascertain, it would only be a sort of PR matter if you then had set about, you being Lonmin,
yes,
set about getting those reports into the newspapers and
yes,
on the radio and TV. If these are stories that the press are picking and the media people are picking up themselves, then it's not as a result of any PR efforts by your side.
Well, Tanya put out the 2 press releases I'm aware of, one on the Sunday, one on the Tuesday, by this time. And weren't they, oh no, sorry, that was internal, the ones yesterday. But they're self-evident that they're just factual.
Well, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Perhaps I can do it now, it may save time later. Appears from the first reference to Tanya that there was a problem in London. The people in London were concerned about loss of production, loss of profits, loss of dividends, and so on. So there was lots of incoming, that must be incoming queries or emails or something.
To Tanya, yes.
To her, yes.
Yes.
From shareholders, funds, and analysts.
Yes.
They would be worried about the effect on the profitability of the company and the value of the shares and all that kind of thing. Is that correct?
Yes.
And she was dealing with that. Questioning has changed, that's the questioning she received, has changed from security situation to production losses and
yes,
financials and covenants.
Yes.
The covenant relates to your debts and
financial situation. Yeah.
And how a company will be financed going forward.
Yes.
Right. Then we skip up the next paragraph. The next reference to Tanya is ask Tanya to circulate storeman release internally to ready ourselves for the inevitable. How much production have we lost or losing announcement, how much production we have lost or are losing. Announcement, but incorporate the whole package of issues in this needs to be finalized by Friday. Now,
yes,
what exactly is a storeman release?
It's a draft. So she would put a draft out. The previous releases we had put out on Sunday and Tuesday were really concerned with the violence of the situation. So they were acknowledging that and what we were trying to do about it. That had been it. We hadn't mentioned production, but she had received phone calls, and the phone calls had changed from that. That's what I've said. So we then had to think about the next release we put out, and I think there was also an email commenting from Tanya and Kubi on this, and Tanya had responded saying, we can't dodge this issue. Eventually we're going to have to say what production is lost. So what I suggested to her is, why don't you get a draft going, because you have to put into that certain numbers, ounces, tons, what we've lost, and also when it's what we've lost, how long will it take us to get back to where we were? There's a lot to it. So when she started that, it would then give the people who were dealing with it, technical people at the mine, for example, time in which to get those numbers together, because it takes a few days to do that.
What did you mean, though, by the phrase, the whole package of issues?
The whole package of issues would be tons, ounces, the financial considerations, the covenant impacts, etc. And Roger had also sent around an email, and I think you saw that to the board. It's in these emails, and he had said, also he echoed what Tandekra said. He said, we're not going to be able to dodge this. We're going to have to say something.
Do we have the release, the press release that had to be finalised by Friday? Was it issued on Friday or issued on Saturday or when?
I don't think it ever went out, Mr. Chairman, because events overtook us and it was a different ball game.
Yes, and when you asked her to do the press release, that was public relations.
No, it's regulatory.
So it's not public relations.
No, it's regulatory. We didn't have a public relations department at that time, apart from communications at the mine.
Okay, let me put it this way. Your concern about what Minister Shabangwe had said, was it because she was thinking it, or was it because she had said it on radio?
Sorry, Mr. Mpofu.
No, I'm
was
saying,
it she?
Yeah, we've had a long discussion about what Ms. Shabangwe had said on SAFM. Wasn't your, all I'm putting it to you that your concern was the fact that she had said it on radio, so it was the public impact of what she had said, wasn't it?
My concern was that she hadn't denounced the violence.
In public?
On that radio that I heard,
yes,
as I was driving into work. But I do know that later that afternoon, her spokesman released, and we talked about that earlier. Your view was her characterization had been changed by Mr. Ramaphosa.
Let's go to page 31. You say there, Mick Davis, our largest shareholder, told me we have his support and offered help and assistance if needed. ETV News tonight quite even to positive in characterizing this as a police issue.
Yes.
Even NUM said this and had to have company criticism dragged out of them. So do you see here you are transposing the idea of this thing being spun as a police issue as against what you call company criticism. That's what Ms. Pillay was trying to say to you. It's a diversionary issue to make sure that the world out there concentrates on this police issue and let you get away with the idea of the criticism of not engaging the strikers. That's self-evident, Mr. Jamieson.
No.
Well, then how do you explain that?
Which part of it? That Mick
Davis all of it.
Mick
the part that says ETV News is quite even to positive in characterizing this as a police issue. Even NUM said this and had to have company criticism dragged out of them.
Yes, that's. I watched both of those on the TV.
I know that.
And that's the reflection that I had of them. That's the description I had of them.
Now, Mr. Jameson, please, man. Please answer the question. What did you seek to convey by saying that the definition by ETV was positive because they were saying it's a police issue, and superimposing that or contrasting that with what you call company criticism, which had to be dragged up?
Yeah. Well, so
isn't it obvious?
Well, you've asked me what I meant to convey. Correct? So what I meant to convey was, if you look at that string of emails, Mark in particular was concerned about the morale at the mine. He thought it was negative news. So what I was doing was responding to him saying, hey Mark, don't be down. So if you're looking at what I sought to convey, don't have the glass half full, half empty. So Mick Davies has phoned us. You can see from the string of emails here that many other shareholders were conveying their support for us. That was evident there.
Mick Davies.
And look, I was calling his attention to two things that I'd seen on the TV, where the tide seems to be swinging between blaming the company to saying this is now a criminal issue.
Thank you.
That was all I was saying to him.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, that's the whole point that I've been trying to extract from you. But why? Going back to the issue of political pressure, seeing that you were the torchbearer of this particular campaign, why was it necessary for Lonmin to be liaising with the ANC?
I'm not aware that who in Lonmin was liaising with the ANC.
I should be asking you.
Yeah, well, then my answer is I don't know.
Go to page 106.
106.
doing that, can I ask you a question that relates to something you said a minute ago? I don't quite understand. Mr. Mpofu was suggesting to you that what was happening was PR,
Yes.
summarising rather boldly. And you said, no, that was regulatory. Now, what exactly did you mean by regulatory? Were you referring to the kind of disclosure requirements that are imposed by the London Stock Exchange?
Yes.
Because Lonmin was a company listed on the London Stock Exchange.
And
or were you referring to something else?
And SENS on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange.
SENS on
We're
the
dual listed.
Yeah.
So
you're
we
saying
have to
you
put
had
out
to
SENS
produce...
announcements and
Yeah.
announcements.
Now, I noticed that from page 32, there's a reference to an announcement. It's sent by Verity Portway on behalf of Tanya Chikanza on the 14th, that's Tuesday, at 11:42.
Yes.
And its subject, London PLC, violence at Lonmin operations. Please find attached an announcement regarding serious and ongoing outbreak of violence to operations in South Africa, which was released this morning. And I see that Tanya is described as being of London PLC, and a London address is given. So was this announcement that he's talking about, was that intended to be PR, or was this possibly what Mr. Mpofu would call a hybrid? Was it intended to be PR, or was it something that you were virtually required by the conditions of listing and so forth in London and in Johannesburg to regularly send out into the market so that shareholders and analysts and others could know what was going on about this listed share?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the requirement is not regularly, it's continuous disclosure. So if there is something which is material happening within the company that the public should know about, public, primarily meaning the market and shareholders, then we are obligated to make an announcement. So the unprotected strike that started on 9th, 10th, and then went over on to Sunday, we were obligated to make that announcement. You're then obligated to make any further announcements that update the situation if there's been a material change. And so that's what these announcements were. So they're regulatory announcements.
I presume if there was a strike which would impact on production, that would be something that investors and shareholders and so
Yes.
forth are entitled to know about in
Yes.
terms of the rules of the two stock exchanges.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Maybe moving on to the next question, but would you object too vigorously if we took the tea adjournment at this stage?
No, I wouldn't object, Chairperson.
15 minutes.
Thank you.
Presumes Mr. Jamison should under oath, Mr. Mpho.
Mr. Chairperson, could I please clarify something from earlier?
I don't see why not.
When I was being questioned by Mr. Mpho on page 41...
41.
Yes. And you took me down to the press and the media and the PR.
IR section, yeah.
Yes. What is your understanding of what IR means? Industrial relations? Is that correct?
Are you asking me?
Both of you are.
No, I'm not answering your questions.
Oh, well, it's
Asking me, and I had,
Yes, sorry.
I had to give an answer which we've heard often in this commission.
industrial
Under
relations. It's investor relations. I don't know if that helps. It's investor relations. So this is not a
Industrial relations, you say?
it's investor relations.
Investor relations.
IR here stands for
I see. So
investor
we
relations.
learn, the nice thing about this commission is you learn something new every day.
I thought that might have caused some confusion because you then think all of this is sitting under a heading which is industrial relations. So
That's fine.
Okay.
So investor relations incorporates media and public relations, correct?
no, it's just regulatory.
Then why does it say in the second sentence under that IR, press stroke media all over at the mine, blah, blah, blah. Why does it talk about the press and the media if it is not, it doesn't include public media relations?
Well, the press and media were also speculating on this
So-
production and what have you, not just the public, the public relations, as you would call it.
No.
So it was the, loss of production, what this means for the platinum industry, all the things that were discussed at MIGDET.
No, all I'm saying to you is that heading, whatever it says, incorporates the issue of media and press, as you have put there, correct?
Well, the heading is just, if you're talking about the heading, it's
No,
investor
I'm not
relations.
talking about the heading, I'm talking
That
about
it
the content.
incorporates press and media, yes, there's a comment there about it.
Thank you.
Jamison, in the light of what you've just said, on page 40, paragraph 1,
Yes.
where it says not IR issue,
No,
what is that IR?
That's industrial relations.
That's
Yes,
industrial
yes,
relations.
Yes.
Because that,
It's ambiguous. It can be one or the other.
Correct. It's usable.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. But the one of industrial relations incorporates public and media and press. Yes?
No, I've said that already.
But
In that paragraph, there's a comment about it,
Yeah.
but our investor relations department is concerned with investor relations, and Tanya runs the investor relations department. She doesn't run a PR department.
Anyway, to save time, I think, and you...
Look, it is a bit of a... The line between public relations and investor relations is a bit of a faint one. Because obviously, if I was an investor, and I held a parcel of Lonmin shares, and I read in the newspapers the ordinary reports about everything was going on at Lonmin, I might either get worried or I might decide to sell my shares. So there's no clear dividing line, surely, between investor relations and public relations.
Yeah,
there must be an overlap to some extent.
Not that I'm aware, but Tanya will be able to qualify that. If we get incoming phone calls and they're about, the issues that you said, then it would be referred out to the mine and it would be referred out to the communications department on the mine.
You say the paragraph IR really relates to what Tanya is supposed to be doing.
And that is investor relations, which is really the market, and investors being shareholders. So if it's a shareholder query that comes in and something related to the regulatory announcements that are required, Tanya deals with it. If not, she refers it on to the communications department in the mine if it's anything else.
Mr. Jamison, I don't want to be too hard on you, but let me just tell you, I have been an executive director like you of a listed company. You know that SENS announcements. Do you know that SENS announcements have to be published in the newspaper?
Yes.
So that's what the chairperson is saying. The line between investor relations and SENS announcements and the public, as it were, is exactly that. That's why those things are not just sent to shareholders, but they're also sent to the newspapers. Do you understand that?
Yes, but not for the purposes of PR, for the purposes of regular announcements.
To the public?
For the purposes of regulatory announcements.
Yes, but part of the regulation, the SENS regulation, says that you issue your SENS announcement to your shareholders, but you also, it must be published in a newspaper.
Yes, so that shareholders can read it.
Only shareholders read. And the other point is shareholders don't only read, if you look at the Star or Pretoria News, they don't only read the business report part, they read the rest of the paper too,
Yes.
don't they?
I guess you could also add to that potential shareholders. So potential shareholders who haven't yet bought shares should know what's going on in the company.
That's all right, Mr. Johnson. Okay. Now, just to clear out a few points before we go back to what we were talking about. Firstly, in fairness to you, would it be fair to say that insofar as I described earlier, insofar as you triggered what I call the chain of political pressure and so on, you were not doing that personally as Albert Jamieson. You were doing that on behalf of Lonmin, correct? All these communications you were doing them on behalf of Lonmin or in the interest of Lonmin.
Which communication?
Everything we've spoken about.
Well, internal is no, it's not on
the
behalf.
Emails, the pressure, the characterization, what have you.
No.
Were you doing this personally as
personal capacity as a chief commercial officer
of Lonmin?
Yes.
Yes.
And these are internal. The letter to the minister clearly was on behalf of Lonmin. So it was originally going to be signed by Ian, but it was signed by me.
No,
the email to the DG was on behalf of Lonmin.
No, yes. Mr. Jamieson, I'm saying all these activities that you are involved in, captured in emails, letters, what have you, you were doing that not as a man, as yourself. You were doing that as part in the course and scope of your duties as an official of Lonmin, correct?
Well, there's two aspects to your question, so I'm trying to answer both of them. The answer to one is yes, the answer to the other is no.
I think you're actually misunderstanding each other.
Oh, sorry.
As far as external communication is concerned, clearly that you're doing on behalf of Lonmin.
Yes.
You're speaking really on behalf of Lonmin.
Yes.
Right. What you do internally in the company, you're not doing necessarily on behalf of Lonmin,
no.
but you're doing it for Lonmin. You're not doing it for your own personal purposes. You are doing them in your capacity, in the course and scope, as it were, of your employment as the commercial manager, whatever your chief commercial manager of Lonmin. Sorry. That's the point he's making.
Yes. Thank you, Chairperson.
Agreed. Sorry.
Yes. And again, for clarity, for the reasons which you have described, which we won't go into, you yourself, you acting as we have just explained, you deliberately chose Mr. Ramaphosa to be the conveyor of the messages and the pressure and so on, correct?
I was asked by Ian Farmer and also by Roger Phillimore to keep him in the loop on anything I thought that I wanted to use my judgment was important that he should know.
Yes, and in your judgment, you picked him up to be the conveyor of the political pressure?
No, in my judgment, I thought that he should be on the loop on some correspondence.
No, I know that. Yes. He was on the loop because he was on the circulation list, but I'm saying you have already agreed that he was to convey the political pressure, but you, in your judgment, identified him as the best conveyor for that political pressure.
Well, he was the only one because he was the only one speaking to the minister.
He was the only conveyor possible.
He was the only one speaking to the minister who we desperately wanted to talk to.
Yes. The next thing is the communication that was flying around was not confined to executives or non-executives. At this stage, it straddled across those artificial divides. If you look at the circulation list, so you'd have non-executives and the executives being circulated on the same communication, correct?
Roger Phillimore, the chairman, was circulating everything to the non-executives. I think that's evident.
Yes, and Cyril Ramaphosa was
Mr. Ramaphosa is a non-executive.
And a shareholder.
Yes.
And the rest of the people there were executives, yourself, Mukwena, and so on.
We were on the ExCo. The executive directors are Simon and Ian. and there were management involved in that as well. So you saw like Frank Rusabello or A.B. Kotler, Mike DaCosta, they're all just below the ExCo.
Yes, of course. I'm not talking about ExCo. I'm talking about management. I'm saying that the communication was straddling the divides between management and non-executives.
Not unless you can show me specifically.
Okay,
then
well,
the only non-executive I was communicating with was Cyril, but in his capacity as Shanduka and our shareholder. But clearly he was the only one who had access to the minister and could influence her to talk to us.
Oh,
right. So.
And Roger, was he not non-executive?
Roger's the chairman. Yes.
Non-executive chairman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. But he, at the beginning of the week, don't forget, on the Monday, had actually volunteered himself to become executive. So he had originally said he was going to chair the ExCos.
So,
similarly, Mohammed Sadat was being brought back, who was a non-executive, but he was going to be brought back in an executive capacity.
Exactly.
So
that's the point I'm making.
Okay.
When you're communicating now, you are not respecting those lines. Whether one was an executive or non-executive, the communication was straddling those lines, correct?
Well, the lines got reset because Roger was executive and Mohammed was executive.
Anyway, did you... You see, Minister Shabangu suggested that Mr. Ramaphosa, maybe in the report backs to you, was some of the report backs were untrue and maybe were deliberately embellished to impress you in plural. Did you factor in that some of the report backs you are getting from the political pressure conveyance might have been deliberately embellished or untrue?
Where was that, Mr. Mpofu? Sorry.
Where's what?
Where you said there was the feedback, which
no. The feedback. I'll just pick anything. The feedback was, for example, what I read to you earlier, where he says, "I've met with Susan Shabangu. She has changed her characterization. She's going to take it to cabinet and that kind of thing." That's the feedback, and for which you said, "Thank you, Cyril."
Correct.
Remember that? Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I'm saying, did you factor in that any of that feedback might have been untrue?
No.
No?
No.
So when he said she has changed, well, for example, she said she never changed her characterization, but you believed because the feedback was that she will change her characterization. That was true, correct?
Yes.
That's why you thanked him?
Yes.
You didn't consider that you might be thanking him for some embellishment?
No.
Okay. And she also says that there was no, or rather, the message was not conveyed to the president and Minister Mteto, but according to the feedback, those things had happened, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And you never considered that those might be untrue or false?
No.
And you never considered the possibility that he simply wanted to impress his masters, as Ms. Shabangu alluded, correct?
No, I didn't.
Thank you. All right. So let's go back to the issue of the ANC that we were busy with before the break. On page 31, let's start on page 31. I'm sorry, no. Is it 35? 35, sorry. Paragraph 3 of that letter, of that email from Mr. Ramaphosa says, I will be speaking to Gwede Mantashe, the ANC Secretary General, and suggest that the ANC should intervene. What did you understand by that?
I didn't know what to understand. I was just copied on the email, so. I will be speaking to Gwede Mantashe, the ANC Secretary, and suggest that the ANC should intervene. Don't know.
What's your answer?
I don't know.
You don't know what?
Well, you said, what do I understand by that? I don't understand.
You don't know what you understand?
Other than what it says. He's going to ask him to intervene. What he's going to ask him to intervene in, I'm not sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So you don't know. The answer is you don't know.
Don't know.
That's fine. Okay, let's go to page 106. 106, Chairperson. 4.4 let's say, feedback and from other stakeholders. And then 4.4 says to consider the extent to which Lonmin should contact Luthuli House and remain in direct contact with them. What did you understand by that? Or what was meant by that since you were in the meeting?
Sorry, Mr. Chairperson. I just want to draw the Commission's attention to the fact that these are minutes of a meeting the 3rd of September 2012.
Yes.
After the incident on the 15th, on the 16th of August.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
So I fail to understand the relevance of this question.
Well, I don't know about the incident, Chairperson. We know that on the 3rd of September, the situation is...
Mr. Mpofu, I would imagine you're entitled to rely on contact with the ANC after the event to support your argument that there may well have been some kind of similar contact before. So I do see the relevance of the question. I'm sorry Mr. Van Us doesn't, but I disallow the objection case.
Thank you, Chairperson. Please answer the question.
Sorry. I'll just have to just read a little bit, refresh my memory, which meeting it was. By this time, we had Natasha Phiyega, which is NV, who was the EVP of processing, had actually been given the portfolio of communications, external communications. So she was asked the question, should we consider talking directly to the ANC in terms of now communications? When I say communications, I now come a lot closer to what you were saying earlier about PR, because by this time I think, memory serves me, we'd engaged Brunswick, who are a PR company, and Natasha was working with Brunswick, who were the PR company. So the question was asked of her. She had this under her responsibility. That's what that refers to.
Okay, before I interrogate that answer, can you, so that I give you the full picture, can you go to page 107?
Yes.
Under matters arising, RP, whoever that is, to speak to Cyril Ramaphosa about the merits of contacting Luthuli House directly.
RP is obviously Mr. Phillimore.
Oh, who is it?
RP is obviously
Roger
Mr.
Phillimore.
Oh, yes, yes. Thank you, Chairperson.
Yeah.
Yes. Roger Phillimore to speak to Cyril Ramaphosa about the merits of contacting Luthuli House directly. You see that one?
Yes.
And then let's go to page 111. Which is the next meeting. To brief Gwedem, no, 2.7, sorry.
2.7.
Yes.
Yeah.
To brief Gwedem and Tasha face-to-face on the situation post the meeting with the Deputy President. Now,
yes.
I'm just saying, so that I don't have to ask you about each. Obviously, the subject matter of this is contact with the ANC about the situation. What was that in aid of?
Well, as I said, there was consideration given when we retained Brunswick in terms of external stakeholder communications. So ANC were identified by Brunswick as a stakeholder, and then there was a debate on whether we should open lines of communication with them. So if you go for the three, Natasha Phiyega had Brunswick under her responsibility. The second one, I think, was possibly, it sounds like she came back and said, well, we thought about it and think it's a good idea. Roger Phillimore, who was then on the EXCO, as I'd said earlier, he was chairing the EXCO meetings. He had said, perhaps it's prudent for me to speak to Mr. Ramaphosa before we do that, and that's minuted. And then it was MS is Mohammed Sidat. Just by way of background, Lonmin had sponsored the where the Rivonia trialists were. Lily's Leaf Farm, we did some work with that. Mohammed was the deputy president, Khalima Malanti, I think, is the trustee of that. So Mohammed had spoken to him, and there was a decision then that Prep Square Mantan should be spoken to after that. That's my recollection of the sort of train of events, Mr. Chairman.
Why did you label the people who were at the copy as criminals?
Sorry, which? Is that in this, on page 111?
No. Were you aware of the people at the Hill being labeled as criminals?
Yes, yes.
And you didn't object to that?
No.
So you must have associated yourself with that sentiment. Why did you think they were criminals?
Because, and clearly not all of them, only the ones who may have been involved in criminal activity and had been involved in the killings or the violence or the intimidation.
Well, if you go to page 24, Mr. Khotle
Yes.
Says that, said to report that a 10th person has been killed. His body is close to the hill where these criminals meet daily.
Yes.
So that must have meant all the people at the copy.
You'd have to ask Mr. Khotle who he meant.
No.
But what I can say is that the word criminal activity, criminals, was used quite freely on the calls that were occurring at that time, specifically after the 12th.
Did you regard those people as your fellow colleagues?
Yes.
Or just as criminals?
The ones that were peaceful and were protesting peacefully, even though it was an unprotected strike, they're clearly not criminals. Only the people who've indulged in killing, murder, assault, and intimidation, those were the ones that would be labelled criminals. And
who said to you that those people who were involved in those things were at the copy?
It was reported back from the mine on the calls.
By
so
who?
Mark, Frank, AB, Barnard, Natasha, Rian. I mean, they were all quite clear.
Okay. And while we're on that subject, on page 40. You said that after the worry of contagion with Bapo, can you see where that is?
Yes.
You say police action to detain and resolve the situation today. That's what did that mean?
Mark had reported, but Frank had reported earlier than that. I think that there was going to be a police plan to do exactly what it said here, give an ultimatum to lay down arms. It had been reported on by Frank I think as early as Monday, and then it was reported on by Mark again on Tuesday, and he had then related that that had been postponed and it was now going to be today, being Wednesday. Subsequently got postponed again, but that was what he'd reported at that time.
Okay. When did you hear about the what you politely call the postponement of the killing of the people to Thursday? Of the operation.
I don't think that's the topic.
The postponement of the operation to Thursday, when did you hear about it?
I can't recall, but it had to be obviously sometime during the course of the 15th.
Yes.
Because it didn't happen on the 15th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the matter was postponed.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the next sentence that says, police have given ultimatum to lay down arms and return to work to 2,000, 3,000, and then you put in quotes, people on the copy. Why did you regard those people as not really people? Why did you punctuate it like that?
Because, again, the reports that were coming from the mine is that if you'd have described them as all as strikers or unprotected strikers, that might not be the correct description, because we were told that there were other people that were there that could be from the local communities or could even be from other companies, i.e. I think shaft sinkers was mentioned as one of them. So that's the reason for the inverted commas.
No, fine. Well, to your credit, whatever you meant there, it was better than what Mr. Kotler said about those criminals who meet at the Hill daily. I'll give you that much. Finally, Mr. Jamieson, I'm going to ask. Thank you. Yes, within the next 5 minutes, I'm going to put the final proposition, or rather, yes, let me put it as propositions. You remember that I said to you yesterday that I said to you that your decision that you were party to of not talking to the people was in breach of Lonmin policy. You remember that?
Yes.
Yes. But before that, I had said that it was also illogical. Remember?
Yes.
Yes. Now, one of the reasons, and I want your comment, one of the reasons for making it illogical is because from everything that you have discussed and some of the issues put to you by my learned colleague, Ms. Pillay, it was at that stage evident to you as management that the NUM had lost the confidence of the workers and even of its own members, correct?
Yes.
And yet, knowing that that was the situation, really what you were saying to the workers was that you will not listen to them, you'll only listen to them if they speak through the NUM, which they had lost confidence in. That's illogical, isn't it?
Sorry, when just to correct what I said to Ms. Pillay yesterday, she said they had lost confidence, and I said their confidence was waning, I think, is what I actually said.
No, well...
I didn't say it was completely lost, it was waning, is the words I used.
Well, I remember that, yeah. You were wrong.
Yeah.
Just to save time, if you look at page 134, 134.
134.
The trade union scenario document.
Yes.
Talking about NUM.
Yes.
Following you said. NUM seems to have lost touch with their members and their confidence.
Yes.
And that's the point I think Mr. Wolf is putting.
That's
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Can't object with that. It's written here.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter the degree. I'm just saying, knowing that what the chairperson has just read, 134, the NUM second bullet, NUM seems to have lost touch with their members and their confidence.
Yes.
Knowing that,
Yes.
would you agree, therefore, that it was an illogical demand to put on the workers to say, we will only talk to you via the organization in which we know you have lost confidence and lost touch? Just as a logical thing. Forget about now all these titles that we both hold.
The logicality of it, I don't know. But my answer would be that there are processes which you can go through. They might not be quick, they might not be fast, and they might not get you the answer that you want. But I'm not an IR expert, and when I say IR, I mean industrial relations, not investor relations. The option was open there for anyone who was disgruntled with their representatives that not long ago they had voted for and given mandates to go to either have a grievance, which is the Mike DaCosta route, as I would say it. They could have gone to the CCMA individually or collectively, or they could have withdrawn their mandate by changing their stop orders or cancelling their stop orders, and they could have come and then said, we want worker committees, for example. Now, that takes some time, I'll grant, but that's the democratic and I think legal process that should have been followed.
No,
I'm not an IR expert. So.
Yeah, maybe it's my fault, yeah. I'm saying to you, it's got nothing to do with IR, whichever one of the IRs. I'm saying logically, you cannot say if us here in this room, if we have lost confidence in an organization, the SPCA, whatever it is, you can't then say you will only talk on our behalf through the SPCA, in which you know that we've lost confidence. That is illogical. It's got nothing to do with labor relations. It's got something to do with logic.
I think I would agree with you.
Thanks.
And add that it would probably have been better to say, go and follow the processes you have at your disposal to rectify the situation. That might have been helpful, I think.
So, in closing then, what I want to say to you is that you, acting on behalf of Lonmin, or for Lonmin, or as we qualified it earlier, you were party to two important events which are possibly causally connected to the deaths of the 44 people. The first one is the decision which you have agreed might have possibly had that effect, which was the no-talking decision on the 10th. You accept that?
Yes.
Secondly, you were also, I use the word maybe uncharitably, of torchbearer, but you are emphatic. Let's use the word that you and I have agreed on. You are emphatic in the crusade to change the characterization, which was part of what I've called the chain of political pressure, which may also have been causally connected to the deaths of the people. Correct?
I was emphatic on that, yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. I have nothing further to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mpofu. I understand the next cross-examination is going to be on behalf of the LRC. Do you want to use 5 minutes now? Can you think there's a point you can deal with quickly in 5 minutes?
Well, if I have the option, I'd rather start tomorrow, but if I don't have the option, I'll use the 5 minutes.
Well, like if you haven't got a 5 minute point, you can start tomorrow. You've not got a 5 minute point.
Perhaps I should ask a few questions.
Yes. You know, you can introduce yourself and set the scene all the time.
Mr. Jameson, my name is Tembeka Ngukaitobi. I am at the Legal Resources Center. Can I ask you, if I understand the case of Lonmin, about why Lonmin decided to disengage with the RDOs after Mr. Da Costa had started the engagement process? You've just given the answer to Mr. Mpofu, where you say that they did not follow the correct legal processes. I want to suggest to you two possible legal processes. The first is the wage agreement. That was a 2-year wage agreement. Everybody knows about it, between 2011 and 2013. Would you accept that? That was one open avenue.
You're referring to the RDOs
Yes.
who approached Mr. Da Costa
Yes.
sometime during the course
Yes,
of
who wanted
June?
an adjustment to their wages?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
do you accept that the way in which the wages issue was dealt with was through the wage agreement?
No. It was more dealt with as a grievance.
Yes. No, I'm saying the way Lonmin wanted it to be dealt with was through the wage agreement.
Yes, to refer back to your representatives who are part of the wage, the wage council. So in the case of the RDOs, I think it was NUM.
Yes.
But there were other members of that. UASA, Solidarity were also members of the bargaining unit. And it was across LPD.
Yes.
So they were referred back to them.
Yes. So in other words, you refused to negotiate on the basis that if they wanted discussions about wages, that must happen centrally at the Central Bargaining Forum.
When you say centrally, you mean at Lonmin?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, did you think that your refusal to negotiate, or rather your negotiation, would be in breach of the wage agreement?
No. No, I didn't.
So you didn't believe that if you negotiated with the workers, you would violate the wage agreement?
Yes, sorry if I got that the wrong way around.
Yes.
If we had negotiated, which we didn't, it would have been in violation of the agreement, yes.
All right. Now, I want to take you through the wage agreement.
Okay, I should caution that I'm not not an...
No, Mr. Jamieson.
Not a
You've told me that
person,
there would be a breach. I want to take you to the agreement. I don't know why you're anticipating my question.
No, I'm just cautioning that I'm not familiar with the wage agreement.
Sounds as if this cross-examination on this issue may take a bit of time. We're going to take him through the agreement. May I suggest it be sensible at this stage to adopt the suggestion you made earlier. Let him study the wage agreement overnight, and then tomorrow morning you can make the points that you wish to make and we get his responses.
Thank you. The exhibit number is XX 2.9 so that Mr. Jamieson can familiarize himself with it.
Yes. I'm sure he knows the terms of the wage agreement. I'm very surprised if he doesn't, but I'm sure he's, notwithstanding that, it's grateful to you for telling him what the exhibit number is. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Sorry, which where have I got it in which bundle?
I suggest you speak to your counsel,
And get
even
it.
though you're under cross-examination, there's no objection to them giving it to you, making sure
Here we
you
go,
got it.
point him out of the document.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.